change your mind, change your habits, change your life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor. Today, we are here with Dr. John Shealy. Dr. Shealy has a PhD in psychology. He has 30 plus years experience working in the field of psychotherapy, and is just an all-around wealth of knowledge. Dr. Shealy, I want everyone listening to know, if they are to watch this episode, what healing tools and practices might they walk away with?
Well, a lot of what we plan to talk about has to do with the importance of coming back to your true self. And there are a lot of different ways of doing that. And then, of course, there's the coming back, and then there's the stabilizing and the deepening of the true self, and having a genuine embodied experience of who you actually are. So we'll talk about everything from, getting started with meditation to the various plant medicines, whether they're psilocybin, ayahuasca, bufo, all sorts of different things that I've had experiences with. So to help them, I guess pick and choose, because there are some wonderful practices and plant medicine and all sorts of very helpful approaches that someone can take. But it's really important that you find something that you resonate with and something that brings you alive, and to sort of, take it gradually and easily and kind of move along. But
finding your way back to who you were before the world told you who you were supposed to be.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Exactly.
I want to just jump in with a question.
Sure.
I know that you have had, you've spoken about your experiences working with plant medicines.
Sure.
And I just want to know, what has been your most profound experience to date? Sure.
Well, that would really be, take us about, what would that be, 6 months ago? Nice. And this is part of what I work with folks, who I'm preparing for their psychedelic experiences and helping them, I guess, establish a framework or an understanding. Why am I doing this? What would be helpful in that kind of way? My first ayahuasca experience about 16 years ago, and I didn't have any real understanding at all of what to do with it. And then probably 7 or 8 years ago, I had experiences with psilocybin, and that was helpful. But it also, it was the time when I started working with other folks, and so that encouraged me to pull from integral psychotherapy and developmental theory and all sorts of different places to say, how can we put together a model or two that could help folks understand? And part of that is understanding that these plant medicines, I think of it really as like they show a different side, like looking at a cut diamond. We have this side and this side, all these different perspectives. So go from ayahuasca to psilocybin, and then I've also had experience with ibogaine, which is helpful in some ways. I wouldn't recommend
that doesn't know, is that toad?
No.
No. What's ibogaine?
Ibogaine comes from iboga, which comes from Western Africa. And iboga is a system that you can tap into if you're careful with who you select your provider. And it goes back to a culturally grounded system, basically, much different than ibogaine, which is what often happens in our quote-unquote health and pharmaceutical-based culture. Go in and they pick out, this is what we need, and now it's over here. So ibogaine is a picking up and over here. So it doesn't have the doesn't have the cultural surroundings, doesn't have who's considered a shaman. It may have 10, 15, 20 years of experience, a lot of rituals that are tied into that, as you find, again, in my view, appropriate experience with ayahuasca. You can go do ayahuasca for a weekend, which to me, that's not it. I mean, it can be better than nothing, but to really experience ayahuasca, ideally, go in the jungle somewhere. But to not do that, to at least give yourself a week and have someone there who has experienced the culture around ayahuasca and the experience of ayahuasca and can speak in that particular medicine. We're talking about nature mysticism, the idea that what's alive and God and Goddess and Gaia and the rest, they're present in trees and leaves and all sorts of things. So in ayahuasca, folks that know what they're doing, that's a hard thing to say, but they'll have dietas. So you'll be eating the leaves of a certain tree, for example. The idea is the energy of that tree is coming into you,
the consciousness.
so you can call on that later on. See, then that's outside the rational level of Western medicine. Doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not going to eat a tree. I guess the point is there are elements, there are variables in plant medicine that are more complicated than simply the medicine itself.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's, I've heard it worded that way, that basically all of the plants have a consciousness, and that's why everybody's experience with it is so unique, because the consciousness of the plant is interacting with your consciousness.
Well, one of the sort of consistent with what you're saying, I'm going to get back to my question. Your first question was, where the most powerful experience? And so let me just go ahead and address that before we lose it. So basically, I'm listing off some of my experiences to get up to what happened the first of this year. So the first of this year, I was blessed with a shaman who I've worked with for probably 6 or 7 years at least. And I went out to where he was in Portland, Oregon, and had an experience there, ayahuasca experience with him and the folks that were managing those experiences. But this time, he came all south of the border, as they say. So it was all in some safe place, legal, blah, blah. But anyway, and so he came and actually spent a week, and there was just two of us. And the experience was profound. And like I've experienced a number of times, probably the second or third day after preparation and settling in and all this, took the medicine. And so I'm sitting there, it takes, 20, 30 minutes for that to kick in. So I'm thinking, well, this is good. This stuff is no good at all. Might as well drink some water. And so, again, here's a piece of data for the support of what I'm saying about someone who's skilled and gifted and is in part, he has learned the culture and he can come and present it. So as soon as he opened his mouth to sing a song that comes through him, it was like, boom, off
it hit.
I am. It's like, wow. And so it stayed like that. I don't know how many hours, but it led to up all night and all sorts of wonderful integration of other insights that had come before, deeper seeings into confusions I didn't know I had until things open up. It was just amazing. The most powerful experience I've ever had with ayahuasca. And actually, preceding that, about a month, 6 weeks, Bufo, 5-MeO-DMT, you asked, that's probably before the camera started.
No, Toad.
Toad, yes, Toad. So I've done Toad probably 4 times, maybe 5, but I've really only done Toad once. And that once was the highest quality Bufo that I've ever experienced out of those 5 times. And the sufficient amount and a environment where I'm absolutely, totally relaxed and can release completely. I don't know if anyone is going to do an adequate dose of Bufo and not be able, I don't know if you can resist that. You can resist ayahuasca to a degree, and you can certainly resist 5 grams of the average mushroom. But because there's so much to surrendering to it, that's why it's important to say my most powerful experience is based on the first ayahuasca experience 16 years ago. Over that period, too, you have a 20-plus years of pretty serious meditation practice 10-day, 20-day, 30-day meditation experiences where you don't talk, you don't see anything, you're just right there. Your little 2 meals a day and the rest. Learn to focus where you want to focus and learn to deal with some of the somatic experiences that come and go. And that's followed 6 weeks later by this amazing ayahuasca experience. Come back about a month or 6 weeks after that. All psilocybin mushrooms are not the same. This one was the most psychedelically loaded I've ever experienced by far. And there was a connection with nature that I've never experienced. I've experienced it more with ayahuasca because the ayahuasca, nature-based mysticism, let's take in the plants, all the rest. So the combination, one of this is not, the first is not a plant medicine, it's coming from a toad. And then here's plant medicine in a very royal sense, it really is. Here's this shaman was, 15 years at least, American, college-educated, very bright person. But so he's able, up on psychology, Western psychology, able to communicate what he's talking about, what he's doing and why, all these things. And so then here comes this next experience, and so it's colored by that same nature mysticism. So the trees are breathing in and out in a way I've never seen them, the ground's coming down. And again, it's like the switch would come on and off. I'd say, well, I guess that's over now. And then, 10 minutes, 20 minutes later, kawoom, back again. There you are. And then and there you are means, back again means a falling away of the conditioned notion of who I am. See, and that is the foundation of healing, like I would like to talk about, is we come up in an experience that is driven by what we have inherited. See, the thumbs, my father didn't think of thumbs. My grandfather didn't think of thumbs. I don't know where the thumbs came from, but we're in a line here of hundreds of thousands, millions and millions of years of evolution. So when the little egg and sperm come together, that's not just, isn't that something? They're blank slates. Whoa, way off from that. And one of the things we know more than anything, being so fragile, is we can't be abandoned. If we're abandoned, game over. We got to make sure these caregivers, these faces we're seeing here, are accepting of us. And so, in the attachment notion is that we have a seeking safety, we're seeking a sense of attunement. So when I'm hungry, I'm fed. When I'm cold, I'm get a blanket. Or I want a sense of being special. Somebody cares for me. I'm a special thing here. I want some help in understanding and processing emotions, and I want someone to have my back. Just that experience of considering attachment, and we look back at that and say, now, what did I not get? What were my caregivers unable to provide for me? And sometimes it's just very obvious. I grew up in someone, for example, could say, I grew up in a violent alcoholic family. I didn't. I grew up the fourth son, 4 in a row, 4 years between all of us. So just to mention, how does that shape someone? So that shaped me to be, by the time how old would I need to be? 6? Probably 6. There's a college student at the table. And then he's there, the next one steps in, the next one steps in, the next one steps in. So one part of my conditioning is I am the dumbest person at the table. I always am and always will be. That was conditioning to the point that when I'm 19 years old, I couldn't imagine ever owning a home or ever going to college. And see, there's no logical, rational reason for that. That's the power of that conditioning. Yeah. That's who I thought I was. And so, and actually it was a union training. I was involved with the Communication Workers of America because my first real job was a cable repairman for 12 years with a phone company. And I was involved with the union for a short period. I went down and got this training. Psychologist Rudy Kreger said, write down on a piece of paper, nobody else will see where you want to be in 10 years. And I said, I want your job. And I could not write that on a piece of paper. And I just said that nobody's going to see but me. And so that was like a mirror held up to me and said, here you go, John. Here you go, buddy. This is where you're stuck. And so I came home and I said, well, I'm going to go to college, and maybe in 6 or 8 years I'll get a 4-year degree. Actually, in 10 years, I was a licensed psychologist. He was an industrial psychologist, but I was different. But I was able to shift because of that mirror, because of that insight. And then I put her to another track, and the other track is going to school. And I say one of the most ballsy things I've ever done in my life at 30 years old is going to a community college and take remedial math so I could start taking college courses. But as soon as I did that, the world opened up. And it's like, holy smokes, this is where I need to be. I mean, I can work, I can do this work, I can be seen, I can be encouraged. I feel alive in this process. Like I never had any, because I wasn't me before. That's the kind of healing we're talking about that can be facilitated by careful selection and preparation and consuming and integration of some of these plant medicines. So the experience that I had this year of those three together in combination, they resulted in a time where I smoked cannabis every day for 2 years until I did an ayahuasca experience. And in ayahuasca, they'll say the voice that comes to you is Mother Ayahuasca. And Mother Ayahuasca said to me, just as plain as we're speaking here, you got to stop smoking dope, John. And so I got all my stuff. I got a collection, looks like, like folks collect wines. So I take my big rack of all these different flowers and I take them and they're gone. No more smoking dope. And so then that's an expression from the 60s. I don't know if I call it dope these days.
It's been interesting for me to read things about being an observer of your thoughts. And so if you know something is wrong to where you're repeating toxic patterns, what is the part of you that knows that you need to change? So there's this internal struggle. Who are you struggling with? And that's that higher self, that spiritual, like whatever you want to think of it as. There is another part of you that's fighting the conditioning.
There's a part of you that's seeking freedom from the conditioning, I would say.
Yeah, I like that.
And see, I would say that the way I think of it is that this pure core natural self, it's seeking what is going to allow it to become enlivened and to become its total pure self, however it can. And if we just appreciate, just for a little bit, some kind of appreciation for just how much change has occurred in the past 20 years, 30 years. Good God, if you go back, my father saw the battery-powered radio come into the house. So people are gathering around and they're experiencing this noise signal thing and trying to pick out the signal a little bit. I saw black and white television come into our house. My grandson's 23 now. So, but when he grew up, see, by the time he's 6 or 7 years old, he's got a laptop and he can order stuff off Amazon. So, I mean, it's a different experience. And of course, not to mention social media and all the rest. Now we're looking at dopamine feeding systems. The red article just, good grief, this afternoon in National Geographic is talking about a very short thing about how do addictions work. And this particular model, I'm not saying it's the only answer to it, we get hooked on dopamine rushes. And so dopamine rushes that's what we're doing with this. Give me dopamine rush, baby. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. And so, see, the problem with that is we set our resting dopamine level up high. So in order to experience something like we used to, like my father might experience.
More stimulation.
Oh yeah, more and more stimulation. And so we see that. So if that were true, we might see things like more violence in movies. We might see things like more, good grief, more twisted and disturbed porno information and images, and they would be super available. And see, all that's happened overnight.
And you're saying all of it is in response to these dopamine receptors. You have to have more and more elaborate things that for people to keep their attention because these dopamine levels, their baseline is now skewed because it's a constant distraction.
Back to how does someone heal?
Yeah,
so
in a world like that, in a culture like that.
What we're talking about, see, is some of the primary, what is the problem? So if part of and that looks at different ways, but part of it is what are we consuming? What is how is the environment that we maintain most of the time? What do we do with discomfort? Those types of fundamental questions.
I really, so what you're saying about what are you consuming? I used to be one of these people that loved to watch. I loved psychology, loved the psychology of serial killers, just interested in crime television, which is, in hindsight, probably me feeding my own anxiety.
Right.
And something that was fascinating to me, and I remember discussing this with you after my first significant experience with psilocybin, was all this floating junk, all this floating imagery in my brain. And I had read enough to know that, psilocybin can lower the veil between the conscious and the subconscious. Well, everything you take in is back there stuck in the subconscious. So I'm like, what is all this strange imagery? And, come to find out, I'm taking all that in and it's all stored back there and in influencing me in ways that I don't even realize. I mean, just like that, feeding that anxiety that I already have. Right. And as a result of that, I'm so particular about what I'll watch because I know now, like if I have an experience, there it all is. And if this is me seeing it consciously, bringing it to the forefront, how is it influencing me? How is the subconscious influencing me in my day to day?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And who you think you are, what you think your capacities are, what you think you deserve, all of these things. And so when you talk about the images passing by, that's a part of the experience with Ibogaine. It's like your life going by in front of you. It's like a life review.
More commonly known as DMT. No,
Ibogaine is what primarily the conversation about it these days is about helping people get off of opiates, because one of its qualities is that it will essentially eliminate the distress of withdrawal. So, and when I was experiencing this was a clinical setting in a hospital bed. Got a heart monitor all the time. Got an IV sitting there in case anything goes crazy, and you just experiencing that for about 10, 12 hours.
Okay.
And for me, it was an interesting experience. A number of out of body experiences. Some of that same kind of images from childhood, and some of the insights that might come from some of that. I wouldn't recommend it. I would certainly recommend it if somebody's addicted to opiates or addicted to whatever they're addicted to, I guess. But it has some risk factors to it around the heart if you have any kind of issues with that. If you don't know, you do. But I just brought that up because it has that comparison. That's not what I've experienced with ayahuasca so much, or psilocybin, either one, or bufo. Bufo is like nothing else. It's this separation between the awareness and your conditioning of who you think you are. I guess I would say with ayahuasca, there's a kite string that pulls you back to relative, the common accepted reality. And with psilocybin, there's more like a rope. Bufo, there's no kite string, there's no rope.
You're gone.
And there's an experience of that. See, there's still an experience of that, and it only lasts 20 minutes or so. It seems like it's much longer than that. But
you probably don't have a concept of time.
Don't have a concept much of anything. But the thing is, see, some folks would look at that and say, this is one of my favorite stories about it. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like, I wonder if that's what dying is like, where there's a falling away of not only from the body, but also from all of this. You're talking about the stored information in our mind. See, so much of the stored information in our mind has to do with who am I? Why am I here? What's the purpose of life? We don't use those questions that commonly until, I don't know, some particular stage of our life, I guess, if we're fortunate enough to tap into them. But it's like that. So there's so much noise, but there's so little authentic experience of being free of our conditioning.
Yes.
And so psychedelics, again, carefully preparation, carefully used, carefully integrated, can be opportunities when we can view our conditioning. That what we thought to be I, me, or mine can be objectified and seen as it's a collection of its objects.
And the condition, all those layers of conditioning. You said to me one time, in using psilocybin, if you have like a ritual, it's like, oh, I'm home. Like you have your ritual and you take it.
Yes.
I'm back to who I actually am.
Yes.
It's pulling back all those layers of,
Yes.
like you said, as soon as you're born,
That's right.
your number one goal of survival from a biological standpoint
Yes.
is get these, you might have two really dysfunctional caregivers.
Yes.
I have to adapt to
Yes.
make sure that they're not going to abandon me. And that is the only way I can survive. Yeah. And then I think the twisted part sometimes in our biology is that your sense of self, it's developing from 0 to 7, and you have no control over the environment that you're in.
That's right. And once we start working at that level, and we have those insights that you're laying out very beautifully there, then there can be a shift, and it can say, I know who I am. I'm someone who can grow up in this chaotic, crazy family system that I did, and I can actually function pretty well. And by golly, I can even adapt myself to the culture enough that I can get a reasonable job and even have a house, and who knows, maybe go to college, all these different things. Because, see, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing our true nature adapting to the chaos, whatever the chaos is.
Because that's what you have to do to survive. Peer groups, beyond your career, you go to school, fit in with everybody else, because we're social beings.
That's right.
So we have to adapt. No matter how ridiculous it is,
that's right.
We have to adapt to it to survive, or else be isolated from social groups, which are we need for our inherent survival.
And this is where experiences like a disciplined meditation practice can come in. When you go away for 10 days or 20 or 30 and they're literally, I'm reflecting now to one of my favorite systems there would be Essen Goenka, Vipassana practice. He died a few years ago, but there are centers all over. Our nearest one would be up in near Chicago. But you come in, donation only, 10 days, you got to do 8 or 10-day retreats, and then another retreat before you have a 20-day experience. My wife and I took 4 years off, had a little 4-year sabbatical, got rid of everything. I walked away from a psychotherapy, 20 years of contact in Tampa, psychotherapy practice. I'm teaching mindfulness. I'm doing training for other therapists, do all sorts of stuff. And it's sort of like leading she says, what about Peace Corps? I said, hey, when we go to Peace Corps. So off we go, get rid of everything. But see, being able to do that type of thing, being able to say, a financial manager would look at that and say, "So okay, John. So now you've got a referral resource, and you're working with other therapists, and you're doing all this stuff. Now explain to me again what you're doing, cashing it all out. Where are you going to go? I'm not sure. We're going to hang out in Peru for 7 months. 7 months it was, but those experiences of listening, see, it's like a inner voice or inner whispering or something that is counter to so much of the culture. There are very few people that are going that even when I quit the telephone company, it was a union job, top craft job in the South, and people kill their grandmothers for those jobs.
They thought that was crazy.
They say, so where are you going? So, well, I'm going to go to school probably for 10 years, and if I'm lucky, I'll be making about half what I do now. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense. And I say, well, I can't explain it to you. It's just what I'm led to do. And so here's this stuff. Well, my wife and I were together on the Peace Corps thing, but I'm actually in Brazil at the time working with John of God for a few weeks. He's a character that's gotten some bad reputation here lately, but different experiences like that. He's a trance medium person, or I think he's still alive, but I'm filling out application for Peace Corps, and so I dropped a note to my wife and said, honey, you filling out your application? And she says, no, not yet. Let's get on this thing, man. And so we're traveling, bouncing around Peru and having conversations with the Peace Corps about where we'll go and all that sort of stuff. But see, there's something there that's so different from somebody who only, be less than 20 years before, had no confidence that they would ever have a house or ever go to college. So there's so much power in turning toward all of that garbage and nonsense and moving through that fear and embracing who we actually are.
That was, I resonate with that so much. I mean, until that first experience working with mushrooms, I just wanted to not be so angry all the time. I wanted to stop having these rage, these consuming emotions. And I wanted to take back control of that part of me. I had no idea just the layers. And without the experiences I've had with plant medicine in this year alone, I would have never left my career of 15 years. I mean, people think that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's great. I have 4 degrees in education, a PhD in education.
Yeah.
Was working as an administrator, which is what I thought I'd always wanted.
Right.
And to say, I'm unhappy, I don't feel like my values are aligned with this system and how it's working currently.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something different. Some people say that's crazy, especially in a world where everybody's saying, well, how many more years till you retirement? What about your pension? And I'm like, I'm not making it to 27 years, guys. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. I have a podcast. And they were like, so it was funny when I announced that I was resigning, some people I work with, they were like, did your podcast take off that fast? I'm like, no, I don't really know what I'm going to do. But just hearing you say that, I would have, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, whatever, if you had told me, well, you're just going to all of a sudden stop. Because I've shared this with you before. Every degree that I went to get and every time I wanted a promotion, I don't think I was ever thinking, does this feel aligned with my purpose? Is this what I want? I was just like, what's going to make me feel like I have this better station in life? I was fighting my own, low sense of self-worth. And how do you fight that? Well, you got to be better. You got to always be better, better.
Right.
What does society think is better? Another degree, a higher position, more money, more things.
Yes.
And so just unraveling all that has been incredible. And I would not have, I don't think that I would have reached that point, especially not to have made all the significant changes I have this year without plant medicine.
Yeah, I can see it, absolutely. And that until there's something that blesses us with that shift of seeing and embodying and experiencing, I don't know what other words to use, that authenticity, it may as well not be there because it's not. It's being clogged up. It's not being allowed. It's not certainly not being nurtured or supported or facilitated. It's being resisted in some way. But see, it's only resisted because our experiences during our early developmental time, when we allowed some of that to kind of sprout out, it was punished in some way, and we got the message very clearly. Much more clearly than this is who I am. We've got to miss, don't do that. 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 And so all of a sudden, here we are. So what can I do? Well, you tell me what I can do now.
I love the idea that a hobby or something that lights you up and something that gives you this energy, this infinite seemingly amount of energy towards it is a clue to your purpose.
Yes.
My dad shared something with us this weekend. It was exactly what you're just saying. He was born in the 60s. He's 60 years old now, so somewhere around there. And he grew up very poor in a very small town. His alcoholic father, very, very violent home. And at school, he was telling us that when he was in middle school, they had this journalism class. And he thought it was so cool. He couldn't do anything but talk about it to everybody. And every time he'd talk about how interesting he thought journalism was, well, that's silly, Tim. Like, that's ridiculous. You got to get a job, support your family, a real job.
Right.
And, at this point, he's a kid. He doesn't even have a family yet.
Right.
So this idea that, that's a sign, that's something that lit him up.
Yes.
But he was very quickly told by everyone else, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
And how often does that happen to even if you grew up in a relatively normal, whatever that means, home, our culture still shapes, you need to do this, get a job that is going to make sense for you, or, job security, all those things that kind of people tell you, projecting their own insecurities or their own fears or whatever onto you.
Yes, absolutely. And Well, thank God there's been at least some progress in how women are treated. See, you don't have to go very far back. When you say a woman's proper job, if she has to have one outside of her 2.3 kids, is, you can be a nurse or you could be a teacher, but it's like, it's not like you can do anything you want, whatever you're led to do. There are no limitations here, people. So, see, we're even culturally and even legally, we're very slow in breaking out of some of these resistances. And what does this do for people of color? Oh, my God, it ain't over yet, man. Yeah. So we've got all of these problems that are going on that are restricting people one way or the other, that narrow what they see as their possible ways out or ways through. See, it's upside down from what you and I are talking about now. Go back, find out who you are, realize you can do anything you want.
At any age.
At any age. Definitely.
But you've got to, I constantly, and I read energy pretty well, and I feel the judgment sometimes when I talk about things that I'm doing, or just also just being transparent and saying, I'm figuring it out. I'm trying to follow the path. I'm trying to listen to reconnect with my intuition and pay attention to, what experiences I need to learn from and where I need to be. And ultimately, I believe now that as long as you lead with love and with doing for others, you're going to find your way. Yeah. And I just feel the judgment of, you're not, that people think I'm having some sort of midlife crisis or whatever. And then that gets in my head, and I have to kind of peel back that conditioning again and be like, to the point where I don't even really want to talk about things in certain spaces because it's just more layers to have to peel back.
I wish I could say something to you that would be better than what I'm about to say, but what I think I'm about to say is as good as it gets. And that is, we have to appreciate that the opportunity, the grace, the blessings to function at the level we're talking about, over the 8 billion people in the world, half of which, I don't know what the current number is, but it's somewhere in the ballpark of, there are 4 billion people in the world that live off of $4 to $5 a day. Poverty is the norm. People in our culture are normally caught so much by the conditioning, and that's only getting worse. We've got epidemics and morbid obesity, the diabetes, the cancer, all the stuff that comes from all that. So people are caught, and it's almost like, I'm almost wanting to say helplessly caught, but that's not really true. They haven't found a lifeline yet. And so, to see it that way, to see that it's such a blessing, but also appreciate that most people are not going to understand what you're doing. It's not going to make sense to them. It's like you're speaking some, I don't know, there are not that many languages left in the world, folks say, but you're speaking some abstract language that only 4 people in the world can speak, and you're speaking it, and what you're speaking is your truth. But people look at you like, I don't understand what you're saying, because you're not in pursuit of personal power. You're not in pursuit of great monetary wealth. You're not in pursuit. It sounds like you're in pursuit of something about yourself. What good would that be to know who you are? I know who I am. It's not from the ego. Yeah, it's sort of like we have to learn. There's stories like in the Buddhist teachings. When you're at the bottom of the mountain, and the mountain is a spiritual, represents a spiritual path. When you're at the bottom of the mountain, there can be there seem to be a lot of great differences. I'm over here, you're over there, and you can carry a good deal of weight. You carry 80-pound backpack or whatever. When you move further and further up the mountain, you can carry less and less. And then by the time you get up near the top, you see the folks that are near the top, it doesn't really matter where they started. They are trimmed down too. They're not carrying 80 pounds, and while their language may be different, they're essentially describing a very similar thing: God, Gaia, unfolding mystery, universe. Right? They appreciate that there's something here that's much more trustworthy, much more clear, I have greater access to within myself than all the noise that the culture is generating for me. But if they're down here, for example, if they are caught in the dogma of their quote unquote spiritual practice, they don't hear this. It's a threat to them in one way or the other. And then the sense of I want things and objects, and I want to be free of pain, and I want to enjoy pleasure. And that's the vast majority of the world. That's where people stay stuck. Then you get over into causal witness and non-dual. Non-dual is an experience of oneness with all that is. There's just the great I am. We can have that intellectually. When I look at a tree, I can understand from what the scientist folks tell me, the tree is breathing out oxygen that I'm breathing in, and I'm breathing out my CO2, and they're breathing that in. So I'm really looking at my external lungs when I look at trees and other oxygen-producing organisms, oceans full of them. So without them, my lungs have no purpose. But it's not the understanding, it's the experience. The best experience, most clear experience I've ever had, back over there to my third experience earlier this year with a very, to me, a unique quality psilocybin mushroom. So it is right here. Those types of experiences, we can take that out and we can say, so okay, that's a connection with nature. Is there any other activities out here in the ballpark of that? And we can pull up things like forest bathing.
Yes.
We can pull up research that says it's not that long. A couple hours in the woods, something like that, has observable, measurable increases in our immune function for days. And so it's not like if you just have to have something you can measure, there it is. Go walk in the forest for 3 or 4 hours. Look what it does to your immune function. Keep you from the cold or whatever else is going on. So there's a lot of that sort of happening too. That being the traditional model, the traditional idea, the traditional practices. And here's a quote unquote scientific something we can measure. Brains, oh, that's what that is. Well, that's not exactly what it is, but at least you can measure that part of it. There may be much more to spending time in nature than just enhancing your immune system. It may also, particularly if you've had high-level states of consciousness, if you've had some psychedelic experiences, if you've been on experiences where you stayed awake for 3 days praying to God for whoever, praying to Jesus, whatever you're doing, you can have breakthrough experiences if you can recognize them and if they're validated for you and if they're explained in a way you can understand them.
So that takes it from the brain to embodying the feeling of connectedness with all living things.
Yes, and I don't even know about the living part, but the living is certainly easier to relate to. Absolutely. It's just exactly what you're saying. Bring it in, embodiment part. Embodiment part, see, makes it so, that's such an important piece because now we'll go up here and we'll go to Bissell Vanderkoop, Body Keeps a Score, Peter Levine, Pat Ogden, these folks that have invested a lot of, big part of their career in their life into understanding what is in the body. How is that related to psychological, emotional issues? What is it? How is it related to trauma? And so it's embodied. So that's why you see, I can't buy a house or go to college. It's not a rational thought. It's in the body. And so then it comes out in the body. Ayahuasca is a good body cleansing experience. So generally speaking, you're going to have some purging of a variety or the other, throwing up or diarrhea or some combination of that. And but
that's good.
Oh, it is good.
A lot of people I talk to are like, oh, you don't want to. No, that's good. It's purging.
And it's not really about, it doesn't feel the same as being sick. And a unique thing about, again, my last experience, that there was the purging, I didn't even feel any disturbance whatsoever in the belly. But it came out in a psychological whatever way. So I was speaking in tongues. I was doing all sorts of things I've never done before. But the body felt great.
And it's all energy moving out of you.
Oh, yeah. And the experience that goes back to 16 years ago was just unbelievable. I mean, I had a death experience on the floor. I felt the cold coming up. I finally made it up, and I was just sitting in the pit latrine for I don't know how long. It was just all sorts of stuff that is clinging to me. The shaman looked at me and said, you got lots of other people's stuff on you. And I wonder how I picked that up in 20 years of psychotherapy. So it's just like, whew, let all that go, let all that go, let all that go. But see, that, some would consider that a rather drastic approach. I
love
don't.
it.
That's right.
I think it's incredible to think about someone like yourself. I think it's such a good attestment to the stuck energy and the importance of releasing it. You went and you got your PhD in psychology.
Yeah.
You've been working with helping people in working in this field of psychotherapy. And still you had, that doesn't mean that all of your, even if you knew everything there was to know about the brain and how it works and how trauma impacts you, and you could explain, you explained very eloquently, being the youngest son, this gave me this sense of self and this belief about self. But there was still the energy stuck that you had to find a different way to let go and release. And I think that that is not near incorporated enough in social emotional learning in our public school system.
Oh, boy.
I don't think that we give, our institutions give people the tools, whether that be education or medical, to be their own healer, which is to, and you don't have to necessarily do plant medicine to practice somatic release. But I think the first thing that people need to understand, because I can't tell you how many friends I have that have watched me go from, and I've shared with you, I have a lot of issues still working through it, like phobias, really bad anxiety, on a prescription for Klonopin. Using alcohol to help with the anxiety, and people who've watched me change, like that have similar struggles, like, oh wow, and them to explain to them, well, you can breathe and release energy, or you could do breath work, or when you go scream outside or scream into a pillow, like you're releasing energy. And it's like, because we're not taught this.
We're not taught this. That's right. But see, back again to, if we look at, I haven't spoke much about this really, but if we look at, like in Canada, they were considered themselves First Nations people. And here, I don't know, we consider them at least Native Americans. And like the folks that do Iboga in Western Africa, these, we might consider these folks are primitive. And what are they doing? Like the Lakota Sioux, among others, I assume, I don't know, but they are still having like the sun dance, where they put like fish hooks in your chest here, and to some depth, I don't know how deep, and they dance around, and they don't drink water or don't sleep or don't for a number of days, and at some point they feel led or called or whatever, and they will rip those out. And so you can see, I've really had a really blessed opportunity to get to work up there for a couple of days. But you can see there's these, you can see the scars on these men's chest. I don't know if they do it with women, but and that's what that would be.
It's releasing pain from their body?
It would be some of that. It would be something where it's bigger. See, it's way bigger than seeking comfort. And it's an investment into the culture and to the teachings. And of course, that would be much more in line with nature mysticism too, the shamanistic practices and others. But there are such wonderful examples around the world of these primitive cultures having rituals and practices that are intended to bring the true person out. There's a whole list of or a collection of writers and research around, like Robert Bly back in the mid-'80s, men's movement. A current version of that might be Mankind Project, appreciating what's happened to men and little boys. See, prior to the Industrial Revolution, the argument would be, like what my father got from his father, because they had a farm, and it would be a sense of belonging and a growing sense of responsibility. So we're going to plant corn now, and the corn needs to be this deep. If it's this deep, the crows will get it. If it's this deep, it'll rot. So we're not playing here. If we don't have corn, I don't know what we'll do next year. See, then the father, in a classic sense, goes to the machine, the go build cars or go to wherever they do. See, and see, that's not a natural experience. It's not something a normal person does. They don't work in a machine or a factory somewhere. They don't make little widgets, and they don't work under the control and domination of this person simply because they have a title to them. See, and it wouldn't have to go that far back, and certainly in some of the more quote-unquote primitive cultures, that man would have to prove he's the dominant alpha. He's not just going to walk in and say, I'm here, I'm your boss, you do what I'll tell you, I'll fire you. And then firing would mean what? I got a mortgage on my house. I'm reading a book now called Debt. It's interesting about just how what debt is about in some ways. But anyway, not get too distracted. And so the father goes there. He's not in a natural state. He's not naturally rewarded. He's not brought alive in his work. And he comes home, oftentimes, sort of in the classic sense, he'll stop and get 2 or 3 beers at the pub, and he'll come home now, and then the son will go. And the son will say, hey, Daddy, what's up? Well, what's up for Daddy is get the hell out of my way. I'm tired now.
Yeah.
And always, what I see now is there's this increased level of that, and it's happening with mothers too, because mothers are working too in places and jobs that don't really fit. They're not in integrity with themselves, so they too are suffering. And so the little child comes up and they say, "Mommy, where are you?" And you say, "Well, I've now seen mommies that are over there strolling in there, and the baby's just tugging away and says, okay, just a minute,
Mm-hmm.
God damn it, I got to look at this. Oh yeah, this is great here. Sorry about the cussing." So you just kind of. And I've seen that in some ways it's just extreme.
Yeah.
It's like you cannot be awake to what you're doing to your child. And then you go back, you see to what we're talking about, attachment and all this stuff. Man, don't reach to your father, don't reach to your mother. Go to your room and be quiet. And oh, by the way, you're 4 years old. Here's your phone,
Here's an
man.
iPad.
Look at the screen. Oh, this is great. I like this. How many likes you get on that post? I got 3 likes. Time to kill yourself, obviously. 3 likes on that? That's what you are, son. You're 3 likes. Your sister got 47 likes in the first 3 minutes. That's who you are. She is worth something, and you're not.
Wow.
So, I mean, the story with my father is he always was a hunter, but as a little boy, he would make a little slingshot, or have his grandfather have him make a slingshot, and he'd go out and he'd kill a rabbit with a slingshot. And so then the mother's there, and here's the meal for the day, and the mother says, "We need to thank Edwin for the rabbit. He killed it." And he's sitting there a little bitty, he could be 5 years old. And he's sitting there thinking, I am part of this family. I am not some visitor that's not welcome. I'm not overwhelming anybody. I'm here helping. I'm
an integral part of something bigger than myself.
Boy, that is it right there. We go back to that and say, I had that growing up. I had that here. And now I don't have it. Where did it go? And our culture says, don't look for that. Don't look for that. The reason is your sneakers, by the way. Oh, my God, those are last month sneakers. Well, who are you? I know who you are. And then, you call that a car you drive? Come on now.
Yeah.
And so more and more that way, you see. And, of course, some of the twisted, perverted aspects of that.
What you said about the father and the son and the hunting together, there was so much to that, like thinking about you have a purpose. Your purpose is to, like you said, with the corn. Okay, we have to have this because this is how we're going to eat. So pay attention. Also, that's bonding. That's a sense of important responsibility.
That's right.
And it's a part of a family unit, and everybody plays their role.
Yes.
And to think about this change, like with the Industrial Revolution of, I'm going to go to work. And I mean, still people, you go to work, I'm working for someone, maybe I don't respect them because I don't even really think that they know more than I do. Like you said, alpha, like this male frustration. Yes. Why am I listening to this man? Why is he leading me? That's inherently not in male nature and how our earlier cultures originated. And also, what's the purpose of what you're doing? Someone else is making money off of it, and they're giving you a paycheck for your time, but you don't feel connected to a larger sense of purpose.
See, and that comes down even today to some of what I think of as the heart of that whole sense of purpose and belonging. See, and that can be seen in our healthcare system. That can be seen in the fact that our physicians, and whether are really functioning as physicians these days, nurse practitioners, and they are not given the respect or time or patience are treated with patience. So they're burning out and they're leaving. And it's like that. What's happened? Well, we have a system that's run not by physicians, and it's not run by the intuition or the intelligence within that particular person. It's run by essentially insurance companies and coders that say, well, if you did this, that's $4. If you did this, it's $8. I think we'll do this one. What do you think? And so, see, it's relatively new that the healthcare business has anything to do with profit. In my day, the hospital was a county system. This is a county hospital, and it's supported by our taxes and whatever else we need to do. And then, of course, there's the churches that had churches that supported Catholic churches particularly. Can't do that anymore. So we're taking away that natural, what I think of still, a natural drive and movement towards service, and we're running it through the profit machine. This is like an epidemic, the moving away from the recognition of and honoring of the true heart of a human being, which seems to me is what we're all born with. But we go through this conditioning in one form or the other. Heaven forbid we make it up, and now we're in this culture. Now what do we do? So yeah, it's very important when we talk about healing. Yeah. It's very important to somehow find something you resonate with that is moving you toward greater silence, so you can hear the little whisper in the mind somewhere. You hear God, Gaia, unfolding mystery. You can learn to trust yourself, and you can have an embodied experience of your true self. There are a lot of those. There are a lot of quasi opportunities for that to happen.
I loved what you said earlier about something holding up something for you, a mirror.
Mirror, yeah.
And you've talked about this before, and this is something that has been a really powerful practice for me, is looking at triggers as opportunities. It's exactly mirrors. Right. Other people are a mirror.
That's right.
We're here. We're on a purpose, a journey. We're learning something.
Yes.
Every time someone upsets you, that is a ping, a projection of something stuck inside you. And if you want to know what it is, you need to get curious about why someone else doing something bothered you so much.
Yes. See, that when there's a awakening to the process or a model that you resonate with, then it's like, I'm making a choice. When that person comes in, I may have been married to him for 30 years. When they come in and they do A, B, and C, I'm choosing to react to what's rising in the body versus respond to what I know might be a helpful, honest expression. And see that in relationships. Some of this is basically this person's triggered. Now they're acting like they're 8 years old. They've regressed back. And then the counter to that is they dropped into, now they're 8 years old and they're squabbling. And people say, we're fighting, and I don't know what we're fighting about anymore. I don't know what the issue was to begin with. I don't know what it is. They don't know what they're fighting about because they've been triggered by something that might be decades and decades ago, 20, 30 years ago, more than that. And so to tune in to the stillness of the body and to be able to connect when it's not still, and bring it into stillness. So that would be a relationship functioning at this level. There could be a common language. So you come in and you say whatever you say, and I'm just kind of say like, and you say, okay, honey, and to see you working with this. Jesus. You say, what's happening, honey? I want to kill something. I want to rip something's head off. There's just such energy moving through me. It's just unbelievable. So, and see, there's a recognition it's not about you. There's nothing that you've done that accounts for this. You've gifted me with a opportunity, embodied opportunity, to replace the reaction of my trigger with a response of safety, attunement, reparenting myself in that moment. But see, I think, again, simple isn't always easy, but it's having, within that relationship, having a common model we can work with. So you can come in and do this, and you can see that I'm going wherever I'm going. But you can't take that personally either, because if you do, you can say things like, it's not uncommon. What did I do that made you so upset? Well, all I did was blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And now all we're talking about is, that's ridiculous. Because the person doesn't know what you did. You don't want to stop doing what you did. It's basically, again, seeing it as a gift. It's like, wow, I just didn't imagine I could get this upset about anything. What's it about? It's about, I don't know what it's about. And in some ways, in my view of it, I don't need to know what it's about. I just need to know this is triggered, this isn't.
And hold space for that emotion to move through. Don't stuff it down. Don't shame it. Just be like, whew, what is that? Ooh, okay. Right. And that takes practice.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
absolutely.
Before, and I think that it starts with the self-awareness and the recognition and the understanding. Because otherwise, a powerful, seemingly consuming emotion does just that. It consumes you.
That's exactly right.
So to be able to be like, ooh, I'm mad, and be like, and not say, oh, you shouldn't be mad, but get curious.
And see, I work a lot with a lot of different processes here. Now I'd be reached back to God knows when this was, but working with language. And the language, see, when I say I'm angry. See, it's very different than saying anger is moving through. Awareness, I am that which is aware of the process. I am going to just let that move on through. Say, wow, look at that. And the partner saying, will you talk to me? You do anything? I say, no, right now. Whoo, wow, you come back and say, wow, honey. Because on the other side of this, I'm going to feel more open, more free, more empowered, more confident, more loving, more compassionate, all these things. So all that's going to happen is working it out in, again, a heterosexual committed relationship. And I don't know that gay relationships are any different than this. I just don't have any experience with them, so I can't speak to them. But it's an experience here that just says, wow, there's such an appreciation for this relationship, because, look what you gave me. By coming in and throwing your car keys across the floor, whatever it is you did, it's just like, wow, man.
Because otherwise it's sitting in there.
It's sitting in there.
And the only way to expel it is for something or someone to bring it up to the surface. So really, it is a gift, because it's all stuck and it's influencing you in micro ways. And when someone causes it to come up to the surface, you can pull it out. Right. You've gotten me on that before with words too, because I'd say, well, I'm anxious. And you're like, are you anxious? Or are you experiencing anxiety? Right. Quit identifying with these conditions, with these emotions. They're separate from you. They are not you.
That's right.
When you use the word I or my, you own your anxiety. Yes. My anxiety comes up when it's not your anxiety. That's right. Separate yourself from it so that you can become an active observer in these experiences.
That's right.
And that it should be naturally taught to us as young as preschool, but it's not, which is why it sounds so foreign to explain it. But I can attest, it's changed my life. Yes. It's not letting, it's riding the wave of things. It's letting them and getting curious, like, why this person didn't even do anything to me, but I'm so agitated by them. Why do they agitate me? Recently, something that came to me.
Become agitated.
Sometimes it's just when, and I see this with myself, and I've felt it before too. Sometimes when you are struggling with your own a sense of self-worth or self-esteem, and someone else is embodying confidence, you're agitated by them because they're doing something that you don't feel like you can do. And so therefore that is upsetting you. And it's always a clue. That's a big one that I think for me was like, wow.
Oh yeah.
If that's what I want, then I need to take the steps to get there. Why would I feel agitated at someone else living in their truth and their existence?
Well, that's where some of this confusion comes. Before Rudy Kreger held a mirror up for me at the University of Georgia, training with the Communication Workers of America, I didn't know. And so there's a lot of that. A lot of what I experienced was, since I can't have a college education, since I'll never own a home, I'm going to dig myself in my peer group. And my peer group's kind of rough and going guys climbing telephone poles and all that sort of stuff, which I was doing, and kind of heavy on the liquor part, drinking something all the time. And so, or smoking dope in my phone truck and all this kind of thing. So, but see, what I think that was is I want a tribe. I want a pack, and I want folks to see me and say they have some respect for me because I climb telephone poles and find troubles and do all kinds of stuff like that. And I can also have an edge to me. So see, I'm not a goody-goody guy. So see, if you need to smoke some dope or something, John can hook you up. No, he didn't have a problem with that. And so those types of things. See, so it's a different identification that fit with the damaged self-image. And man, that can go so far. It really can. It can put you into a place where because see, that can feel comfortable, and you can feel like you actually belong. And if you're just assume that you're successful in that route in some ways, then breaking out of that requires something.
Yeah,
it requires something. I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to then. What was it? Close to 20 years later, I guess. I'm going to walk away from my psychotherapy practice. Why is that? And so now I've been here about 10, 11 years, I guess, since I came back from Peace Corps. It's like, so is there another time? And at this point, I'm saying, I don't know if it's another time or not. I don't think it's important to know if it's another time. What's important is to know that I trust the God, the unfolding mystery. I trust that voice more all the time. And I can see more clearly when I'm on my path of embodied truth for me, embodied love and compassion, generosity for me, and when I'm not. And the rewards of that being in line, embodied integrity, I'm addicted to it. So there's nothing, I can't imagine anything taking me away from that. It may happen. I'll be surprised.
Because you wouldn't, now that you've felt what it feels like to treat yourself well and to have that, every act of self-discipline is an act of self-respect, which is an act of self-love. You're going to feel bad if you were to go back to those other ways. I'm like, wait a minute, I felt much better over here.
Oh, yeah.
Which is what, like hypnotherapy, if somebody, and I've heard this, you explain it as if people come to you and say, well, I want to stop smoking. Okay, well, you want to find out why you smoke? Stop smoking, and then all the reasons will be right there in your face because it's just a distraction mechanism. And it's, the hypnotherapist that I went to said essentially like she's been doing it long enough that when people will say, oh, I want to quit smoking. Well, smoking is not your issue. There's something much deeper. There's a much deeper core that we need to get to. So, self-love is really the core of everything. So if you love yourself, you're not going to mindlessly eat a ton of processed foods every day. You're not going to smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. You're not going to drink alcohol that's going to damage your liver.
That's right.
You're doing those things because, to cover up pain, but also like self-love is going to cause you to do things that are for your highest good.
Yes, that's right.
So if there are people listening, Dr. Shealy, and I think everyone has this curiosity around plant medicines, around like reaching altered states of consciousness. But if you were just someone who was like, okay, I want to start connecting with myself, I want to start, practicing a surrender or looking inward or connecting with my body because I'm always in my mind. What are some simple at-home things that are the highest value for something like that?
Well, it's going to depend on what resonates with the person. It's sort of like they say about healthy habits. It needs to be something you enjoy doing. Meditation takes many different forms, including running, riding your bike, all sorts of gardening, all sorts of ways that if for you find that it's bringing you into a focused mind where the attention is right there in the movement of the body, like the bicycle experience. Of course, that could be a bit dangerous because you got to pay attention to what's going on around you too. But the movement into that open-hearted, compassionate, observing the body move, and noticing when the mind goes off to solve some problem, or the mind goes off into thinking about whatever you're thinking about, but you're not being present to what's happening. I guess my bias would be the high-end practices of meditation would be found in Buddhist practices, and in my own work with Theravadan, really, or insight practices, the ones that Joseph Goldstein and other folks have brought to America. Those are very helpful. It's a helpful practice that you'll find a more advanced version of that in Essen Goenka practices. That would be he'd use the word vipassana, and those the entry into that is essentially 11-day experience. A lot of folks say I don't know about 11 days. Sounds like a lot to me, and so it's certainly true for me. Started out with Thich Nhat Hanh, which is he's more of a Zen practitioner, but Zen means all sorts of different things. But there's so much available free online now, and I have some that I've made on my website too. But I mean, there's nothing special about them at all. But find something that feels special to you, and if you want to, go into a couple of phone apps that you can get that will help direct you to them. There's probably dozens of them by now. But it's difficult to begin. And folks will say, I can't meditate. And of course, my response to that is, how do you know you can't meditate? Say, because my mind is drifting. You're meditating. You're aware that your mind is drifting. See, it's one thing for the mind to be drifting, it's something else to not be aware of it. So you're becoming aware that the mind is drifting. Great. And so then, see, because what we're introducing there is a capacity of choice. I can see my mind is going off into this track here, and I know when I go off in this track, it ends up, the consequences are not good. I create suffering for myself or others, or I'm more confused than I started, whatever it is. And you can say, it's like watching movies or whatever. You change the channel to go to something else. You don't need to watch it. But without that awareness, so we're sort of gradually, easily, like almost working with Teflon, working with a way to separate out our awareness from our objects. We're doing a little bit of that, little pieces of it, because we're saying, "Oh, I'm watching the mind process now. I'm watching the habitual, self-destructive, self-critical. I am seeing this. I am seeing this. I'm not that. And in that awakening, which we can see those things and say that's a small awakening, but to have an awakening that we're choosing to react in ways, we're choosing to open up to the discomfort in order to free ourselves from our triggers, all that's a big deal. See, Rudy Krager didn't go back to my seat and shake me. He just asked a question, and the question hit me so hard, it's like, holy smokes. So right time, right place, here's the question. Right time, right place, here's the practice. So just engage in some meditation practice, something nice, kind, and gentle like you found with Thich Nhat Hanh, or an 8-week program like Kabat-Zinn puts out that I've taught for I don't know how many years before I stopped doing it, mindfulness-based stress reduction, those types of things. If you're here in Louisville, you got all sorts of opportunities right over there at Earth and Spirit Center. They teach all kinds of things like this.
So you think guided meditation is usually a good place to start? I think
you got to start there. Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. Some people may not, but I mean, it's like having some help redirecting you back. When you practice with Essen Goenka's model, there will be some of that, and there'll be more times silent. But it's a beautiful container. I can't support all the dogma around it. This is the way the Buddha taught. This is the only way, whatever. just don't worry about all that stuff. Just appreciate the environment they provide for you and the teachings and the power of that man, which you'll see on a videotape, but you can still see its quality to a certain degree. But
I love what you said about it's not that your mind isn't going to be busy, but if you are becoming an observer of the thoughts that come up, that is meditating, because you are separating from your egoic mind or from your, conditioned brain, and you're just watching the thoughts that come up, and you are not casting judgment, but learning about yourself based on those thoughts that come up. And like a friend of mine and I we did a breath work together, and we laid there in silence, and she said, "Oh, I started thinking about my boss calling, and I needed to do this for work." And so if that thought comes up again, just let it drift by. Don't get attached to it and run off with it. Just watch it.
Don't get attached to it and allow yourself to be pulled off by it. But see, some of these experiences, like doing that for 10 days, 20 days, 30 days, see, that's a pretty deep end of the pond. And all we're talking about now is a light, stick your toe in and see if it resonates with you. And to experience that level of freedom, there's nothing to do. All you're expected to do is to show up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you're expected to sit for an hour, and then you walk for a little bit and sit for another hour, and you do that. And then there's so much that comes up that is obviously not stimulated by anyone but your internal process. And so there's a lot to learn in that, in a significant.
No distractions. What's
what's
there when you pull away every distraction?
And they all come up, and they come up and come up. And then there's the hope of what they would say the connection with the body as a collection of vibrating kalapas, which is the word they would use for whatever reason, Indian word, I guess. And I actually had that experience on my first 20-day retreat, which was actually after about a little over 3 years of being out of the country, either being in Peru or in Africa in Peace Corps, and that the body's just vibrating. And so you just kind of you tune into that, see, and it's like, well, so where's pain? Pain comes with the resistance. And so I sat for like 4 hours, and the bell would ring, people get up and go walk, and I'm saying, well. So, of course, then the bell rang for the dinner, and I'm in Thailand, so it's sort of like, oh, man, I got to go get something to eat. So, but that experience, you see, to be able to see what we have is a collection of vibrating energy.
And it's always happening, but you were so still and without distraction that you could feel and experience it. So
still and not being lost in distractions. Of course, I also was in a room that was full of, to get to a 20-day retreat, you've got to be able, there's not going to be, folks are not going to be making noise and moving around. They're sitting like stones. So you're sitting there in a room with 100 people, and they're sitting there like a rock. And so you're just kind of like, but, the interesting thing about that experience was, I would have thought that I could have sat still and done fine for the first third of it when they're practicing on concentration, but I couldn't. But as soon as there was a shift over into what happens in the next 2/3 of the experience, it was like just the stillness came on. It's just like, well, okay, there it is. And so you just look. And see, those experiences are very valuable.
Yeah.
And you might have little moments, shots of that, even if you do if you create a space in the corner somewhere in your house where the only thing you do there is meditate, and you go in and you sit down and you meditate there, and you don't take your phone, and you give yourself a little corner of sacred space, and you go visit it. Another thing besides meditation would be hatha yoga, because hatha yoga is going to open you up to where your body is. And it's also a process, this is oversimplification for sure, but it's a process of noticing, well, that's it for me. And then, of course, you work, and you open, and you open, and you open, and you open, and your body moves all kinds of ways. It's simply virtually incapable of doing a couple months before. And then you have more connection with your body, and you connect when you walk, you connect when you reach for the water, all sorts of different things. So you're preparing yourself for more embodied experiences.
You're slowing down and being present with kind of like Eckhart Tolle in the tea. Don't focus on the end result, focus on the process of making it and be present for that entire process, which is really a great metaphor for life.
It is. And there's also, see, when I get to here, if I try to go to here, there's pain. But I'm going to relax gradually into the pain over the months. Pain, 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 pain. And I'm going to become comfortable relaxing into pain. And so if I happen to have 5 grams of good psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and there's something that comes up that's painful, something that comes up that's scary, something that comes up that's disturbing, something that comes up that brings up grief, which is kind of what we're looking for, then we relax into it.
You've conditioned your body to be a container that is capable of holding pain and fear and anxiety.
And moving through it.
Yeah,
and
incredible.
A lot of folks, and in my experience, this is more true for women than men, they're valid reasons for not wanting to be in the body. There are things that have happened to this body that I would love to not ever revisit. And that takes just unbelievable amount of courage to turn toward that and reclaim that and reparent that and revitalize that. But I don't know how to do it any other way. We're not going to do it with pharmaceuticals that numb us out and make us feel like I'm not in pain anymore, I'm not running anymore, I'm not anxious anymore. Well, great. Well, keep doing that for a little while and you say, I'm a zombie. And I don't know, I'm not the only person. That's what I'm seeing popping up all over the place, and some of that's with young people. Some of it's like people in their 19, 20, 25 years old, and you look in their eyes and say, holy shit, man, Holy Ghost, man, you are not here. Where did you go? And a lot of folks are going off into a series of psychotropics, series of antidepressants, and heaven forbid they get on benzos. Yeah. Man, folks get on benzos. It can take multiple years to come off of them. Yeah. So it's not just a casual thing. Hey, man, want a Xanax? So to be able to learn somewhere, as many places as we can, to relax into the discomfort and move through it. Hatha yoga, meditation, serious running, pretty much serious anything. You devote yourself to one thing, the distractions are going to present themselves as being obvious distractions soon enough. And if you pay attention at all, you'll notice when you're headed for the center of your path or on your path and when you're headed for the ditch. And there are different experiences. And you'll get tired of ditch work. And the ditch work has some element, generally speaking, of attempting to escape. And something I did back, this is good grief, close to 50 years ago. People say, ever done powder cocaine? I said, I have. That is my favorite. Powder cocaine is unbelievable. And I did that for a couple of months until I realized I was figuring out what I could sell and how much cocaine I could get for it. And I realized I have got to get away from this stuff. And I did. I never do anymore because I realized this stuff gives you, for me, it gave me a feeling, you see, so different than that little boy that can't go to college, never on my home. Man, I'm in charge of everything.
Felt powerful.
Whoa, I love it. Who's not? Mm-hmm. And so, those experiences are very important to realize there are ways to escape that will lock you in and take over your life and your soul. Be very careful with those substances. Even if it's alcohol. Alcohol is a amazing burden to our culture, and it's promoted all the time as if there's nothing wrong with it. And if you just ask your phone, hey Siri, how many people have died as a consequence of alcohol, and ask that how many people have died because of fentanyl, and see which one wins that battle. Yeah. So we have a culture that's really encouraging us to deny and run away. Absolutely. So we've got to wake up to that too.
I love what you said about it's just a reframing discomfort, not even pain, discomfort as an important part of life and experiencing life. We can't just always let me be, I don't like this feeling, or I'm not feeling good. Let me go distract myself. Let me go entertain myself. Let me go, use drugs or drink alcohol, anything to distract from discomfort of sitting with myself. But the more that your body wants to maintain homeostasis, so that it's pain or discomfort is important to be able to feel joy. I mean, there has to be that yin and yang balance, which it's like you were saying, people numbing themselves out. You're not feeling anything, and you're not connected to your intuition or your sense of self or purpose because you're just, like you said, a zombie. I like that you said that a part of you was like, ooh, this is a problem. I need to stop. Because not all people, it seems like, have this internal, I guess use the word struggle or force pushing against them. That's like, something's wrong. I feel that it's consuming and it's heavy, and I admit that I need help outside of myself. So I'm going to seek that help, but I can feel that I'm going down the wrong path. It seems like not everyone has that internal connection with themselves, that like there's this observer saying, ooh, you need to do something. Do you think that I'm interested in just like soul models and concepts of the soul? Like, could that mean an older soul, or what do you think? What are your thoughts on just?
I don't know. I think it is just a wondrous blessing.
Yeah,
to
that's
have
true.
that frame of mind somehow.
Absolutely.
That says I have to be careful and not lose myself, because there's a strong drive to lose myself. To lose the pain, to lose the challenge, to lose all the things that are associated with growth. Challenge, this is difficult, this is hard, I'm failed this part, I've got to do it again, I've got to blah, 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 blah. So all of those things, so-called failures, those things allow us to feel more comfortable with ourselves and allow us to be more forgiving and kind toward ourselves, because we have to let go of the notion we're ever going to be perfect in anything. So it's
lessons,
teachers. Yeah. If they're asked, is there anything you want to wrap this up with? Mm-hmm. And that would be back to the importance of finding out who we are, this collection of digested food particles. It has some, I don't know if it's true or not, but my working hypothesis is it has some purpose here, like my tomato plants in my garden. Mm-hmm. They don't make eggplants, they make tomatoes. And so there's something here to do. And if I can get quiet enough and tune into it, I can at least be headed in that direction. And if I don't know that, then I'm just lost. And so whatever I do, whatever my values are, whatever I think my purpose is not going to be accurate. I'm not going to be authentic. I'm not going to have an authentic experience of being alive. That's a pretty important thing there. So that takes a lot of work. That requires a lot of energy, commitment, and discipline. So when we look out at the world and we see all the things we see now, where things are getting increasingly insane, I don't know what other word to use. So we have to be careful that we don't try to fix it all. One of the approach to this is there's a shift from the doing, which is what we're committed to when we're in this adaptive strategy. We're doing in order to be accepted, doing in order to be. There's a shifting here, and now it says, let me settle into being and allowing whatever I do to rise from my being. You can't do that if you let your Jesus complex, that's what was to me that went off to Peace Corps. The Jesus complex is not trustworthy because it's the situation is beyond capacity to fix. If you feel led from the heart of your true being to do whatever it is, that's a very different thing. Very different thing. You're not just trying to pick another higher piece of the fruit from the culture's acceptance apple tree. You're trying to follow that voice, that sacred voice, God, Gaia, Jesus, unfolding mystery, whatever is trying to pull you into your authentic self, facilitate your embodiment of that, and to have an expression of that out into the world that will have some impact of good and service to others. But you can't bypass this stuff, spiritual bypassing. I'm going to go straight to service. Well, good luck with that one.
Yeah, because you haven't done the inner work first.
And you're going to be exhausted and burned out. That's what happens. And I was an activist. And then I retired from being an activist. And now I'm just no longer an activist. I have these conversations. I love these conversations. I hope they have some positive influence for somebody. I'm not responsible to those somebodies. Yeah. I'm responsible to the folks I work with, and that's all I can do.
Dr. Shealy, I know that you offer several different services to people and that some of those are virtual, so it's open to people even outside of the Louisville area. I'm going to be sure and include all of that information and links in the resources of this episode. I want to say thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity. It's been a ball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Okay.